And now I would like to introduce Dean Brenda Johnson, who will introduce our keynote speaker, Jessica Steele.
That's a pretty hard act to follow, but I'm sure we can do it. And now for our keynote speaker. We'd like to welcome our keynote speaker, Jessica Steele. Ms. Steele is currently president of Urban Sitter, an online service that connects parents to trusted babysitters recommended by people they know. It is worth taking note of this company. They provide a great service for college students and recent grads to supplement their income in a flexible way by babysitting while pursuing their studies or a full-time job search. Prior to joining Urban Sitter, Ms. Steele served as Executive Vice President of Business and Corporate Development at Pandora Radio. She was one of the original members of Pandora's management team who helped conceive, launch, and scale the business. Ms. Steele and her team formed the strategic partnership to deliver the radio service via mobile, automotive, and household devices and helped to make Pandora a household name. While at Pandora, she also served as the founder and executive sponsor of the company's popular Women in Business group, which has been an empowering and inspirational resource for women charting their careers at the company. Previously, Ms. Steele also held key positions at Yahoo and at Overture Services, the company that pioneered paid search advertising on the internet. Jessica earned her undergraduate degree at the University of Pennsylvania and a master's degree from London School of Economics. She is also a singer, songwriter, and a proud mom and a Berkeley resident. Please help me in welcoming Jessica Steele.
Thank you for inviting me here this evening. It really is an honor to be invited to deliver a commencement speech, but it is also a great responsibility. I say this because I have absolutely no memory what my commencement speaker said in his remarks. Maybe it was something about making the world a better place. And I've interviewed quite a few folks as I prepared for this evening. Most people don't have any idea what their commencement speaker talked about. So my great responsibility here tonight is to make exceptions out of all of you and say something that you might just hold on to as the years pass. Now, let me say that I believe you are all quite accustomed to being exceptional, so perhaps my job is not a difficult one. Most of you have beaten the odds many times, earning the seat you're sitting in here tonight. You've achieved something worthy of great pride. You are now college graduates. I offer you my sincere congratulations. And before I offer you any sage advice, I feel I ought to qualify myself as a credible source. What did I do to earn the right to be up here addressing you at your graduation? To start, I can tell you that I also beat the odds many times on my journey to this podium. As Dean Johnson mentioned in her introduction, though, the proud achievement that led to my invitation here is that I spent the better part of the past decade helping to build a music company in Oakland called Pandora. Are there any Pandora listeners here? Show of hands. Excellent, thank you. Are any of you listening to it right now? No? Okay, great. That's going to really improve the odds that you remember this. I have 3 messages for you today about the relationship between struggle and success, about pushing the boundaries of your own horizons, and about happiness. Here's the first one. I have come to believe that there is a close link between great struggle and great success. Most success stories, when you look beyond the glossy magazine cover, are ones of struggle, of a refusal to quit, and of prevailing against all odds. I could talk for many hours about my experiences over 8 years of building Pandora. From the outside looking in, the technology industry and the music industry look very glamorous. And the media and the news often create an impression that these companies just spring up into overnight sensations, and then they get bought for billions of dollars, or they go public on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. The founders then pat themselves on the back for a few years of hard work and go on to become jet-setting digerati, right? That is the allure of Silicon Valley for many who flock to this part of the world. But let me tell you, Pandora's experience, and frankly, that of most companies who ultimately meet with success here, is light years away from that fairy tale story. The truth is this: building Pandora was really, really hard. The company fought off more than one near-death experience during its history. And by that, I mean we were, more than once, only a single board meeting away from deciding to shut down the company. For the first 4 years of the company's history, it was called Savage Beast Technologies. It occupied small, dingy office space in Oakland. It was financed by the founders' overdrawn credit cards. And at times, it couldn't afford to pay employees what they were owed in salary. There's one memorable story about a QA engineer who approached a founder at the end of the day asking to borrow bus money because he literally couldn't afford to get home from work that night. In a typical day of work, the founder would go from a business meeting to City Hall in Oakland to fight an eviction notice on the office space. Later, after the company managed to raise venture funding and pay all of those salaries that were owed to employees, we developed a clear vision of our mission in the world. It was about personalizing radio and playing for each listener only the music that they love. And it was about helping artists to reach their target fans, even if they weren't already multi-platinum selling rock stars. That vision served as true north for us as we dealt with adversity and successive blows. You see, several entities, including the big record labels, music publishers, and radio broadcasters, all with far greater power and resources than we had at the time, were determined to put us out of business. They fought us on legal and legislative fronts, as well as on the playing field. It was a long, drawn-out battle, and it continues even today. People sometimes sarcastically say, well, that'll take an act of Congress, about something that's really hard to do. In Pandora's case, it actually took 2 acts of Congress to ultimately ensure the company's survival. And that was the direct result of a groundswell of support from millions of listeners who took action because they loved their personalized radio experience and a good underdog story. And so we did persevere, and we grew. The company eventually went public 11 years after it got started, and it's still growing, still fighting the good fight. All of our struggle and our refusal to quit, it became core to our culture, to our identity. It made us resilient in the face of challenges and ultimately successful. So why is this relevant for you? I'm telling you this story because many of you, I dare say most of you, have been handed the gift of great struggle in your lives. We all exist somewhere on a spectrum. Some of you have known more of it than others. Some members of your graduating class have been homeless while they put themselves through school here. It is safe to say that you have been in training for great success from a young age. You've got serious survival skills that distinguish you from many of your contemporaries. You are resilient and determined. You have overcome adversity, and you dared to have a vision of your future that defied the boundaries of your current circumstances. You beat the odds and made it to college. Maybe you're the first one in your family to do so. You dug deep and worked hard here. You learned a great deal, had your horizons expanded, and chose your specialty. And now, today, you're graduating with your college degree and preparing to move on to the next phase of your journey. You're heading into the world with formidable survival skills at your disposal. I mentioned earlier that I beat the odds throughout my life, too. I dared to imagine for myself a future that was a significant break from the circumstances of my childhood. I grew up a child of divorce from the age of 1, with a single mom who worked an endless series of part-time jobs, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time, none of which ever seemed to last very long. She knew how to stretch a little bit of money a long way, but we didn't have much. My mother, sister, and I moved to a lot of different apartments. I now know it was because my mom wasn't always making rent, and we were evicted. I used to ask my high school friends to drop me off around the corner from my mom's apartment because I was embarrassed for them to see where I lived. I worked steady jobs from the age of 14 and saved up money in order to get a car and pay for insurance when I turned 17. A few months later, I had an accident and totaled that little cheap car. But you couldn't get around where I grew up without a vehicle, so I marched into the local bank and took out a loan and had the car fixed, because at least I knew it ran before it wrecked it. After I left home, my mom was homeless for a time, living out of a tent in a campground. Those experiences of living close to the edge equipped me with valuable survival skills, and they instilled in me a strong drive to improve my circumstances. Like you, I was ambitious and hardworking. I got a lot of student loans, financial aid, work-study jobs, and a few scholarships to attend college. I managed to get admitted to the University of Pennsylvania as a beneficiary of the university's charter, which challenged the school to admit a certain percentage of freshmen from rural, low-income areas of my home state of Pennsylvania. I arrived at that school nervous that I wouldn't be able to make it there, given the education I had had compared to all the private school kids around me. I learned, a couple years later, that my privileged freshman roommate, who had been one of my first friends at college, had referred to me as white trash. I hesitated to include that little anecdote in this speech because I still wince, even today, 22 years later, when I think about it. But you know what? Even though the words hurt, it made me stronger. I was driven, and I found my way at that school. In fact, I found a way to thrive, and my confidence grew dramatically. 4 years later, that unrefined country girl from Perry County was one of a few students nominated by the university for the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship. You may remember that Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar. Well, guess what? I didn't get the scholarship. But I did get some words of wisdom from one of the professors involved in the nomination process, and I'd like to share them with you as my second message. After interviewing me, the professor described my life's journey up to that moment as a series of ever-expanding concentric circles, like rings in a pond when you drop in a stone. With each leap I took, from Marysville, Pennsylvania to UPenn, from Penn to Tokyo, Japan for a year of Japanese language immersion, and so on, my horizons expanded dramatically, and what I could imagine for myself and for my future broadened as well. He encouraged me to keep pushing against that boundary of what I thought was possible. And in so doing, I might come to know, over time, all that I was fully capable of achieving. I can tell you, when I sat there in his office on the verge of my own college graduation, I couldn't have imagined that I'd end up going to England for my graduate degree the next year after all. I refused to quit, and I applied for and got a different scholarship that fully paid my way for my master's degree at the London School of Economics. Thank you. I couldn't have imagined that I'd later stumble into the business world as a naive academic and into the hands of a mentor who saw some potential in me and set me out on business challenges that took me all over the world. Or that I'd dive into the internet industry when it was just getting started and emerge a veteran deal maker. That I'd release 3 albums of my own music and join the management team of a little music startup that later became iconic. Or that by my 40th birthday, which was yesterday, by the way, that I'd be the president of a company and delivering a commencement speech to college graduates. These are the highlights of my story as the concentric circles expanded in my life. What will yours be? What are those defining moments that have expanded your horizons thus far? I'm sure that Berkeley City College has allowed you to imagine a future for yourself that you couldn't conceive of before you walked through the doors 2 years ago. What will be your next leap? Maybe you're one of those 100 students who are enrolled at Cal to continue your 4-year degree. Maybe you're someone who wasn't accepted to Cal when you applied, but you didn't give up, and now you're headed to another 4-year degree program. Perhaps you're diving into the working world with your associate's degree and into an industry that attracted you once you came here and got exposed to it. No matter what your next move is, I challenge you to all keep pushing against the boundary of what you think is possible and embrace the expanding horizons that open up to you as a result. Do this until you know what you are fully capable of achieving. The third message I'd like to share is something that life has taught me rather recently about happiness. Perhaps this will resonate for you driven types who have been on a mission to improve your lot, like I was. It turns out that happiness does not lie in the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It does not peak when we reach some preconceived notion of what the finish line of our success looks like. For me, there has been a direct correlation between struggle and achievement and happiness. My happiest times in my adult life, outside of falling in love with my husband and later my newborn son, have been when I've been in the trenches with my colleagues at Urban Sitter, Pandora, and other companies before that, working hard to build something significant and lasting against the odds. It's tied up in that feeling of bounding out of bed in the morning with a sense of purpose, my head filled with the challenges of the day's business. It's in the personal growth that comes with setting out to accomplish something I've never done before. Maybe something that seems audacious and elusive, and not giving up, even though it is really hard. When the eventual moment came that Pandora made me financially secure, something I had been striving for from an early age as a sort of finish line of success, it honestly felt anticlimactic. I wasn't any happier because of it. My greatest pleasure from that event came in helping my mother to get the first house that she's ever owned. A place where she can plant a garden with perennials because she knows she's going to be there year after year. If your mother is here with you today, look her in the eyes and thank her after the ceremony. She's in this with you together. Your struggle has been hers too since the day you were born. We have dads and other members of your support teams here too. Don't forget a big hug for them after the ceremony. So while you're making your way through the next chapters of your journey, I urge you to embrace the happiness that every day, with its attendant struggle, affords you. And know that, cliche or not, it really is all about the journey. So I urge you to dance your way through it. In the words of a famous contemporary poet, clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Yes, we did. It's a cheap trick, I know. But if you remember nothing else, you are going to remember that your commencement speaker sang Pharrell Williams to you. In all seriousness, my hope for you is that you cherish the survival skills that life has handed you. Recognize them for the competitive advantage that they are, and apply them to hard problems that scare and excite you. Find your joy in the little things each day. And finally, take a good long while to bask in the glow of your achievements. Frame that diploma and hang it on your wall to remind yourself that you are well on your way. As my mother told me almost daily when I was a little girl, the only limit on your future is your own imagination. Thank you, Mom. And thank you to all the moms and dads, grandparents, and other family members here who have supported you. Thank you to the professors who've inspired and guided you. And congratulations to the 2014 graduates of Berkeley City College.